Hi everybody, welcome to our Apprenticeship Service webinar. Today we're going to be looking at a live walkthrough of some of the key apprenticeship journeys that you need to be aware of when using the Apprenticeship Service to manage your apprentices. And this session is aimed primarily at employers. My name's Nick Duff from the Service Engagement team, and I'll be doing the hosting for today. Before we start, I'll just point out that this webinar is being recorded, and I'd like to remind you that by registering and attending today, you've been given your consent and you're agreeing for the webinar to be recorded and then uploaded onto our YouTube channel. If you feel that you've changed your mind regarding that consent, can I ask that you please dial off? Okay. With regards to those recordings, I'll tell you how you can access those in a little while, a bit later on. And that way, once you get the recordings, you can refer back to it as often as you want, and you can get colleagues to listen in if they need to as well. I'll also let you know how to access a handout that we're going to be sharing today. That handout's got all the key links that we'll be referring to during the session. So you just stay and download that handout towards the end of the session. Hopefully you'll all notice that you've all automatically been placed on mute. You'll remain on mute throughout the webinar. We're expecting that today's session will last for about 90 minutes. Well, we did our practice run yesterday. We went slightly over time. So hopefully we'll be able to pull that back into the time allowed. But it might squeeze the Q&A session that we've got planned towards the end. So like I said, we're putting the Q&A session right at the end so that we can give as much time as possible for you to see all the different journeys that we're going to demo today. But if we do run over, what I might do is I might steal just a couple of extra minutes for those that can stay right at the end of the session to cover some of those key questions. Any questions that we don't get through today, we'll commit to taking them away and make sure that we get you an answer. So we'll source an answer for you, and we'll send them back out to everybody. We'll source an answer and send that back out to everybody today by email, and that'll be in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. So if you want to ask us a question, look for your control panel, and hopefully you'll see a heading called questions. If you click on that, you can pop your questions in there for us. And then at the end of the session, as you leave the webinar, you'll be directed to a very short survey. I'd love to know what you thought about today's webinar, so please do take a moment just to answer a few quick questions and provide us with your feedback. So today I've got Rob Dickinson, Luke Brown and Nithya Jaganesh from our apprenticeship operations team, and they're going to be doing the main input for our session. And then we've also got Gabriel Peter Thomas, who will be running the demos for us. And
the demo you'll be seeing comes from the dummy data in our test environment.
And as I mentioned, they'll be demoing some of the key apprenticeship journeys. And we've been covering things like adding a PAYE and additional users, accessing levy funding, or how to reserve funds if you're a non-levy paying organisation. We'll go through the recruit and apprentice function and things like adding an apprentice and provider permissions in your apprenticeship service account. And we've also got Sam Miller, who'll be joining us for the Q&A session, just to help us answer any questions that you might have should we have time at the end. So welcome to all of our presenters. Up first, I think I've got Rob. So Rob, are you ready to take on?
Thank you, Nick. Welcome to the webinar, everyone. We'll get going. Okay. So this webinar is targeted at employers which already have an employer account with the Apprenticeship Service. However, to start, we will show some slides summarising the employer account registration journey. Can we move to the next slide? Firstly, in order to access the Apprenticeship Service, you need to have a gov.uk one login account. The gov.uk one login registration process asks you to input your nominated email address, set a password, and asks you to choose one of 2 possible two-factor authentication methods. Login is authenticated via two-factor authentication security code, which is sent via text message or generated from within an authenticator app. More information about creating a gov.uk one login is available in our online help articles, and we will provide links to these in the webinar handout. Next slide, please. After completing your gov.uk one login registration, you will be navigated to the Digital Apprenticeship Services 5-step employer account registration journey. Step 1 is add your user details, where you will be required to enter your first and last name. The terms and conditions are available on the link at the bottom of this web page, and when you click continue, this will accept these terms and conditions. Next slide. After entering and confirming your details, you will be presented with our 5-step Create Your Employer Account task list. Step 1 is marked as complete, and the web page shows the remaining 4 steps required to create an employer account within the Apprenticeship Service. The 5 registration steps are: 1. Add your user details. 2. Add your organisation and PAYE scheme. 3. Set your account name. 4. Accept your employer agreement. And 5. Add a training provider. We will not go through the entire registration process now. A video showing the full 5-step registration process will be made available on our YouTube channel shortly. We will, however, show you the 2 methods to add a PAYE scheme and how to sign the employer agreement, as you cannot get funding for apprenticeship training without it. Next slide, please. Adding a PAYE scheme to an employer account is step 2 of the 5-step registration journey. When starting step 2, you will be asked how much your annual payable is. You have 3 options here: over 3 million, close to 3 million, less than 3 million. Selecting either options 1 or 2 prompts you to add your PAYE scheme using your Government Gateway login. This is typically for employers that pay the apprenticeship levy. It is important to note that if you add your PAYE scheme via Government Gateway, you will be able to add multiple PAYE schemes to the employer account, something we will show you how to do later in the webinar. Option 3, less than 3 million, prompts you to add your PAYE scheme using your account's office reference number. This is typically for employers that do not pay levy. The account's office reference number is shown at the top of all paperwork an employer receives from HMRC. If you add your PAYE scheme via this route, you will not be able to add multiple PAYE schemes to the employer account. Next, we'll look at accepting the employer agreement. Next slide. Accepting the employer agreement is step 4 of the 5-step registration process. When completing step 4, you will see the employer agreement in full, something we are not going to show here, but please do read. You will be asked if you want to accept the employer agreement on behalf of the employer account you've just created with the options of yes or not yet. Selecting yes, I accept the agreement, and clicking continue presents you with the green confirmation box informing you that you have accepted the employer agreement. This means that you can now get funding for apprenticeship training. Next slide. Providers have the ability to invite employers to join the Apprenticeship Service under the Manage Employer Invitation section of the Provider's Apprenticeship Service account. The invitation will lead the employer into the same 5-step Create Your Employer Account journey. For more information about the provider-led registration journey, please view our online help articles. Links to these will be provided in the webinar handout. Right, let's move on to the live demo of the service, so please bear with us whilst we switch over. Okay. So, once you've completed the 5-step registration journey, you should have an active Apprenticeship Service account, which looks like what we can see on screen now, which is the account homepage. To start with, we are going to show how to add additional users onto your employer account. We recommend that you have at least 2 active users per employer account. You must not add your provider or anyone that is not part of the employer within this section. We will cover provider permissions later in the webinar. To add and invite users, go to the Your Team link at the top of the web page. This will load up a web page of users that currently have access to your Employer Apprenticeship Service account. To invite a new member, click the Invite a New Member button, add the new user's details, and then select the team access you want to grant the user. The different levels of team member access are minimal access for employer services. This is used for employees solely using the Apprentice Ambassador Network. View information but can't make changes. This is known as the View Only role. Add apprentices and view information. This is also known as the transactor role. Accept agreements, view information and PAYE schemes, organisations, apprenticeships and team members. This is the full account owner access role. You can select the permission level you want. In this example, we will just set the full owner access role at the bottom and click Send Invitation. This will invite the user to register for the Apprenticeship Service and add their account to their specific employer. You will be able to see a confirmation of the invite sent, and you can either add another team member, view all team members, or return to your homepage. We are going to select View All Team Members and click Continue. Back on this screen, you will be able to see a list of the users with their particular access and status, including the new user we've just added. So, For the user we've just added, if you click View next to one of the user accounts, a new web page will open where you can resend the invitation or cancel the invitation. Invitations are valid for 7 days. When a user accepts an invitation, they will see an acceptance web page. They need to accept invitation to be added to the employer account. Okay, back on the list of users, please note the status of the user has changed from invitation awaiting response to active. And again, we'll be able to see all the other users that have access. Next, we're going to show you where to go to change permission and remove users. Identify the user you want to change the permission for or remove and click View next to their name. On the next page, you have two options, Change and Remove Team Member. Clicking the Change link will give you the ability to reselect one of the 4 preset permissions demonstrated earlier. If you want to remove a team member's access completely, you would click Remove Team Member. We will go ahead and click Remove Team Member. You will now be presented with a page asking you to confirm the action. Click Yes, Remove Now. This will disable the user's access to your employer account. On the Your Team page, there is a confirmation banner showing the user has been removed and the user is no longer listed. That's the journey on how to add, amend, and remove users to your employer account. We are now going to show you how to add additional PAYE schemes and organisations onto your employer account. Please note, adding additional PAYE schemes is typically only available to Levy paying employers. To add an additional PAYE scheme, go to the More link at the top of the web page and select PAYE schemes. Click on Add a New Scheme. And on the next web page, you will be prompted to add your additional PAYE scheme using your Government Gateway login. Click Continue. Input your Government Gateway credentials and click Sign In. Okay, you will be presented with a web page asking you to confirm the PAYE scheme is correct. We will click Yes, Continue. On the next page, you are informed that the PAYE scheme has been added to your account and you are given 3 options. Add another PAYE scheme, check finances, or return to homepage. We will select Return to Homepage and click Continue. Back on the homepage, if we go to the More link at the top of the web page and select PAYE schemes, we can see the additional PAYE scheme we have just added. We have now added an additional PAYE scheme. Let's return to the homepage and we'll now add an additional organisation. An employer can be a single legal entity or organisation or part of a group of multiple connected organisations as defined by HMRC. If, as an employer, you qualify as the latter, you may wish to have separate apprenticeship service accounts for each organisation or add multiple organisations to one account. If you wish to add a connected organisation, this is the journey you would follow. On the home page, click on the Your Organisations and Agreements. On this page, you can see a list of all the organisations and agreements currently registered with the account. Click the Add an Organisation button. Type in the name of the organisation and click Search. The service will then display a list of possible matches. Select the correct organisation from the list. You will be asked to check the details. If the details do not match and you need to navigate back to the list, you would click No Search again. If you are satisfied the details are correct, click Yes, Continue. For the purpose of this journey, we'll click Yes, Continue. On the next page, you are informed the organisation has been added to your account and you are given 4 options. Sign an agreement to allow the organisation to spend funds, check which team members can sign the agreement, add another organisation, or return to homepage. For this journey, we will select the top option, sign an agreement to allow the organisation to spend funds, and click continue. Please note the disclaimer on this page, then click continue to the agreement. On this page, the grey box summarises the main points from sections of the agreement, but you can read it in its entirety by scrolling down or navigating using the quick links that will take you to each clause of the agreement. Please read this carefully before signing, as this is a legally binding agreement between your organisation and the DfE. We will now go to the bottom of the page and click Yes, I accept the agreement. This will take us to the success page, which shows that we've successfully accepted the agreement in a big green box. We'll now click View Your Account to go back to the home page. Next, we're going to show you how to change an organisation's name. From the home page, again, select your organisations and agreements to see the list of organisations added to the employer account. Select View All Agreements next to an employer account. This will show us the history of all the agreements between DfE and this particular organisation. The agreements will change periodically to reflect any changes to the funding rules, legislation, etc., and each version of the agreement will appear on this page. We will now click on the Show All Sections Plus button to expand the agreement, and we'll scroll down and click on Update These Details. Clicking this will pull in the latest details from Companies House and display them here. If an employer has changed their organisation name recently, they'll need to ensure this has been updated with Companies House and allow 7 working days before attempting this journey. On this page, we can review the latest details from Companies House, and once satisfied they are correct, we would select Yes, update my details using this information, and click Continue. So we'll do that now. We then have the success page confirming that the details are correct, and we will now select Go to Home page and click Continue. We are now going to move on to show you how to grant providers permissions to carry out certain tasks on your behalf within the Apprenticeship Service. So, to add provider permissions, we are going to go to the home page and then scroll to the Apprenticeship section and select Your Training Providers. This will show you any connected providers you have previously added. For now, we are going to click Add a Training Provider. This will open a new web page where you can search for a UK PRN. Ensure to select the correct provider from the drop-down and click Continue. You will be asked to confirm the provider, select Yes, add the provider, and then click Continue. Once you have done this, you will see the success page. Click Return to your training providers. You will now be able to see the provider you have added. Let's go ahead and set some permissions. Okay. On this web page, you have 2 types of permissions you can grant to the provider. The first is around adding apprentice records on your behalf. This means that the provider will have full control of reserving funding and adding the apprentice details. You will still get prompted with a final approval request before the apprenticeship is fully set up. This won't give providers full access to your account, and they won't be able to see any of your personal details. The second option for permissions is to allow your provider to advertise apprenticeships on your behalf. We call this Recruit Apprentices and Trainees. The options here are allow, but I want to review adverts before they are advertised, and do not allow. You can always come back and change the permissions, as well as adding multiple providers to have permissions. For now, we are going to tick allow to both sets of permissions and click Continue. Again, you'll be asked to confirm the permissions, so we'll click Continue. This will return you to your provider list, where you see a success box informing you of the successful action, and the newly added permissions are now visible. If you want to change or remove the provider's permissions at a later date, you would navigate to this page and click Change Permissions to reselect the permission level. Please note, once you have added a training provider to be a connected provider, they are not able to be removed, although you can remove all of their permissions so they cannot carry out any actions on your behalf. Okay, now we're just going to go back to the home page. Right, so now we've added and removed additional users to our employer account. We've added an additional PAYE scheme and an additional organisation. And we have also granted training providers permissions to our account. I'm now going to hand over to Nithya, who will take you through the recruit and apprenticeship journey. Nithya, over to you.
Thank you, Rob. In this section, we'll go through the process of how to recruit an apprentice. This task can be carried out by employers or by training providers. Before your advert goes live, it will be checked by quality assurance team to make sure it contains all of the correct information and it meets our standards. It is important to note that only one of you should create an advert. If both you and your training provider create an advert, it will be rejected by the quality assurance team. If a different training provider has already created a vacancy for you and you have decided to move to a new provider, you need to ask the original provider to close the vacancy before a new one can be created. Otherwise, that vacancy will also be rejected. Now let's go through how to create a journey. To start with, you need to select your apprenticeship adverts on the home page to create a vacancy. When you select your apprenticeship adverts, you will be taken through to your dashboard view of your apprenticeship vacancies. If it's the first time you're creating the vacancy, then you will not see this dashboard. You will now be selecting the big green button at the top of the page to create an advert. This brings you to the page that has been designed to help you create adverts. So before you can start creating an advert, you will need to know the information that's listed here, like name of the employer, course, etc. You can also use our recruitment APIs to create adverts, or you can ask a third party or a training provider to create adverts on your behalf using our APIs. And you can click through the links here to find out more information. To create an advert, you need to select Start Now. You will be taken to the new task list, which is visible here, and this shows you all the fields that you're going to complete. You will see that there are 5 sections of the task list that need to be completed, and there is a 6th section at the bottom that allows you to check all the answers that you have submitted before your advert will go live on Find an Apprenticeship. You won't be able to select any of the numbered section until you have completed the first section of the task list. So we are going to fill the first section now. Let's click on Add Title, Advert Title. You will now need to add the title of your apprenticeship vacancy. You must include the words apprentice or apprenticeship in the title of the vacancy you're wanting to advertise, so that candidates are aware that they are applying for an apprenticeship. So now we have added. Let's press save and continue. So you now need to choose which organization is this advert for. This should be one of your legal entities. So let's choose one of the legal entities here and press save and continue. You are now taken through to what training course your apprenticeship will take. As you begin to type in the box, it will show you the list of courses that are available. So let's choose a course and press save and continue. You will now be shown a confirmation page where you can confirm or change the course that you have selected. So let's press confirm and continue. You now need to enter a UK PRN or the name of a training provider you wish to use for this apprenticeship. Let's add a training provider UK PRN and press save and continue. You will now be shown a confirmation page where you can confirm or change the training provider that you have selected. For now, we'll just confirm and continue. We are now through to building up information about your apprenticeship. So here we'll be looking for summary of the apprenticeship. To attract applicants, you will need to write a few sentences about the apprenticeship so that it will stand out for apprentices. For this demonstration, we are adding some pseudo text and click Save and Continue. You are now through to input some additional fields. On this page, you can include everyday task for the apprentice or the location of the training, whether the training will be 1 day a week or a block release, and the qualification they will get at the end. You must include 3 bullet points for each of these fields, otherwise it won't get through the quality assurance process. So let's add some details here and press Save and Continue. You will notice that we have returned to the task list, and you will see that the first part of the advert has been completed, and we can now move on to the employment details. So let's click Closing and Start Dates. You will now need to enter the application closing dates and the apprenticeship start dates on this page. Please note the application closing date must be at least 14 days in future, and the start date cannot be before the closing date. So let's add these dates and press Save and Continue. Yeah. You will now need to complete the duration and the working hours. The first section is how many months that the typical duration of the apprenticeship will last, including work and training. Please note the apprenticeship must last for at least 12 months. The second section is the details of working week, such as Monday to Friday or in shifts. The third section is how many hours a week will your apprentice have to attend at work, including their training. So let's press Save and Continue. We are now taken through to how much will the apprentice be paid. We can choose one of the 4 choices listed here, which is set the wage yourself, national minimum wage, or national wage for apprentices, or you can also set as competitive. Please note, if you choose to set the wage yourself, then it must be above the national minimum wage. And if you choose to set as competitive, then it may limit the number of applications. For this example, we are going to select national minimum wage and press Save and Continue. We are now taken through to extra information about pay, like bonuses and benefits. So this is an optional field, so let's leave it blank for now and press Continue. We are now taken through to how many positions are there for this apprenticeship. Here we are going to select 1 and click Save and Continue. Now we are showing where the apprentice will work. You can either choose your own address, which is pulled from the legal agreements, or you can choose to enter a different location where you can add a new address. For this demo, we'll choose the existing address and press Continue. We have now completed the second part of the task list, and we are through to requirements and prospects. So let's click on the skills on the third section. On this page, you are able to select the skills that your apprentice will require and will select few skills. There is also a free text to add new skills that's not on the list. So let's try adding a new skill, and you can see it appears on the list above. So we are happy with the skills. Let's save and continue. We now need to input the qualification that you would like your apprentice to have. You can choose one of the qualification from the list. For this example, we are going to select GCSE from the list and choose a subject, maybe English, yeah. And choose a grade, and we can check it's essential or desirable. So we can choose essential for now and press save and continue. You will now be shown the qualification that you have input, and you can either add another qualification or you can continue through. We are not going to add any new qualifications for now. So let's click save and continue. We are now through to what is the expected career progression after this apprenticeship. You may want to mention some specific routes the apprentice could take once qualified. Let's add few examples and press save and continue. We are now through to what else would you like your applicant to consider, and here you can put additional information in about your apprenticeship if you require. This is an optional field, and so we are going to skip this for now and press save and continue. We are now through to section 4 of the task list, and we need to complete the details about the employer. So let's click on the first section, which is name of employer. Here you can select your registered account name on the Apprenticeship Service account, or you can use the free text box to add a different name, or you can also choose to be anonymous. If you choose to be anonymous at this point, it could mean fewer people apply for your apprenticeship. Let's choose the existing name and click save and continue. On this page, we have got additional information that can be input about yourself. You can add some additional information about your organization. You can also select a website if you have one and tick the box if you have signed up for the Disability Confidence Scheme. And then press save and continue. We can add in contact details of someone the applicant can contact if they have got any questions about the vacancy on this page. So this is optional, and so we are skipping this for now and press save and continue. We are now through to how you would like to receive your application. On this page, you can select either through the Find an Apprenticeship website or through a different website. For this example, we'll choose Find an Apprenticeship website and press save and continue. We are now through to the task list, and we are on section 5. So let's go and choose section 5. We are now through to the section where you can add some additional questions for the applicants. For example, why do you want to work for this company, or what interests you about this role, etc. So this is an optional field, and we are skipping this for now and press save and continue. We are now through to the last section where you can check your answers and submit your advert. Let's click on section 6. On this page, everything that we have input will be played back. You can look at all the information that's been added in the advert, and you can change or continue through to select the preview to see how your advert will be displayed on Find an Apprenticeship. So let's go ahead and click on preview. At this point, you need to check that you're happy with the way that the advert will be viewed on Find an Apprenticeship. So you need to double check all the information that you have input, and you have the option at the bottom of the preview page to change your advert or submit. There is also an option to delete the advert. If you choose to delete at this point, it will be deleted from drafts and you won't be able to recover this advert. Once you have submitted your advert, it will go through to our quality assurance team, and then you will be able to manage your adverts later. So for now, we are happy with this advert. So we are going to submit the advert. You will now show the confirmation page that your advert has been submitted for approval with the vacancy reference number. And now you can choose to create another advert or return to your dashboard to view and manage your adverts. So let's click on return to the dashboard link. This is where you will manage your adverts. You will be able to see adverts that are in draft, pending review, rejected, live, and closed by clicking the respective links. You can also view the applications that you have received for vacancies and manage the applications here. If the advert that you have submitted to your quality assurance team is rejected, you can select the rejected adverts and edit the advert as required and resubmit back to our quality assurance team. You will be able to view all your adverts through the link at the bottom of the page. So we have been through the process of how to recruit an apprentice on the apprenticeship service. We are now going to show you how you can find a training provider for an apprenticeship you are considering. This can be done from within your account under Find Apprenticeship Training, which is found under Apprenticeships on the home page. Yeah. When we click into this, we are directed to a new page where you can view any apprenticeship standard. They are initially viewed alphabetically, but you can also use keywords, qualification level, or category of apprenticeship to filter this further. In this example, we are going to search for developer and choose software developer apprenticeship. Yeah, let's choose the software developer. Yeah. You will then be shown an overview of that apprenticeship, including the typical duration and maximum government funding available. Further down, you can then search for a training provider that provides training for this apprenticeship. You have the option to input a location to filter results, but this can also be left blank. In this example, we'll just look at all providers. Yeah. You will then be shown all training providers that offer this apprenticeship. You have further option to filter by location if you do not do this on the last page. You can now filter by the type of training options such as day release or workplace training, as well as reviews from both employers and apprentices. Each training provider on this page will show review scores and their training options alongside their achievement rate for that subject area of standards. We'll now choose a training provider to view, and after clicking in, we'll choose the first one to view. And we'll see more in-depth information about the review scores as well as an overview of the provider. Further down this page, you will see information about the specific apprenticeship for the provider, which includes the training options again. You will then also see contact details for the provider if you wish to discuss anything further with them or want to organize for training to be delivered. If you want to look at other providers but still remember this one, you can add them to a short list alongside other providers to then view all of the details on one page from the top of the screen. So that's the end of Find the Training Provider journey. Now let's go through the aggregated employer demand in the slide. Please bear with us while we switch over to the slides. In some cases, you may not be able to find an appropriate training provider in your area for an apprenticeship. In these cases, you can submit interest in training for your area and submit the number of apprentices you are considering. This creates an anonymized advert that training providers can view. A training provider can view the list of interest employees have shared from within their apprenticeship service account. And if they wish, they can send their contact details to you if you wish to consider them. As stated beforehand, training providers do not see the name of employers that have shared interest and will only see a location and the number of apprentices you are considering. I'm going to pause there and hand over back to Rob to show how to add an apprentice within an account. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you, Nithya. Lovely stuff. Please bear with us whilst we just switch back to the live demo. Super. Right, we're now going to show you how to make a reservation, add an apprentice, and how to view and manage your apprenticeships. If you are a levy-paying employer, you do not need to reserve funding, as levy-paying employers fund their apprenticeships from their accumulated levy balance. For non-levy employers, there are two ways you can reserve funds. The first option is that you can go through the apprentices link on the homepage and start the Add an Apprentice journey, or you can go to the Your Funding Reservations on the homepage and just make a reservation with no apprentice added yet. We will come back to the Your Funding Reservation section later in the webinar. For now, we're just going to demonstrate the first journey through the Apprentices link. This will mean that we can reserve funds and add an apprentice together at the same time. Please note that this is also the same way levy-paying employers add apprentices, but they will not be asked to reserve funding. So if we click Apprentices and then click Add an Apprentice, Okay, we'll start the journey to reserve funds and add an apprentice. Please note the information in the Before You Start section, as you will need this information to successfully add an apprentice. Click Start Now. Please note that if the account has multiple organisations, you will be asked on an additional web page which organisation you want named on the contract with the provider. This is something that we're not showing here. So on with the journey. The next stage of the journey is to add the UK provider reference number, which is also known as the UK PRN, of who will be delivering the apprenticeship training. Select the correct UK PRN and click Continue. This will then ask you to confirm your training provider. If you select No, you will be required to re-enter the UK PRN. For this journey, we're going to select Yes and click Continue. Once the provider has been selected, you will be asked whether you want to add the apprentice details yourself or if you would like the provider to add the apprentice details. If you select I would like my provider to add apprentices, then your chosen provider will get a notification to complete the information required. Please note, this is not successfully making a reservation. If the provider has not been granted the correct permissions, as we showed earlier, they will not be able to add the apprentice. Once the provider with the correct level of permissions has added the apprentice details, you will then have to approve the apprenticeship. This is also the moment where levy paying employers leave the journey, as the following pages are for reserving funding only. Levy paying employers will not see the following pages and will rejoin the journey later. For now, we're going to select I will add apprentices and click Continue. Non-levy employers will see one of two pages. The first possible page is where you will be asked a series of questions about what the apprenticeship training your apprentice will take. This page is on screen now. You'll see this web page if you have not got any active reservations already added and ready to use. The other web page you may be prompted with is where you can select to use a reservation already created but not used. As mentioned, we're showing the first potential web page where we have not created any reservations yet. We are now going to go through the questions asked in order to reserve funds and add an apprentice. The first is, do you know which apprenticeship training your apprentice will take? We are going to click Yes, and you will be asked to search for a course. Start typing the course name and select the correct course from the drop-down results and click Save and Continue. The next question is, when will the apprentice start their apprenticeship training? As the apprenticeship will be funded through a reservation, you will be prompted with a 4-month window starting from the previous month. Once you have selected a month to reserve funding or selected an estimated start date on this page, the funding is reserved for up to 3 months and you will have this long to complete setting up your apprentice on the service. So, for example, if we were to select March 2024 on this page, the funding would be reserved for a new apprenticeship starting between March 2024 and the 2 following months, so April 24 and May 24. If the apprenticeship does not start within these 3 months window, then the reservation will expire and you will have to make a new reservation. So on this screen, we are going to select the estimated month and that the apprentice will start and which month we want to reserve funding for, and then click Save and Continue. You will be presented with an overview to confirm. You can see the employer name, the apprenticeship start date set as the 3-month window previously mentioned, and the planned training course. You'll need to select Yes, reserve funding now, and then click Confirm to set up the reservation. This will give you a confirmation page again with a big green box informing you of a successful option. There are now 4 options of what to do next, which are recruit an apprentice. This is a separate journey, which we just showed earlier in the webinar. We also have additional support videos available to help with recruiting an apprentice. Find a training provider. Again, this is a separate journey that we showed earlier, which allows you to find a training provider if you have not already agreed which training provider will be delivering the training. Add an apprentice details. This continues the add an apprentice journey, or go to homepage. You can come back to this reservation at a later date, but as mentioned, the reservation will expire if it is not used within the 3-month window. For this journey, we're going to tick Add Apprentice Details and click Continue. And you will see a page that asks you to select the apprenticeship standard. It is here in the journey where Levy paying employees return to the Add an Apprentice journey. They will not have seen the previous reservation pages and will have been navigated directly to this page when selecting I will add apprentices. The only difference in this page between Levy and non-Levy employers is that the standard is not pre-populated for Levy employers and will need to be selected. We can see on this page that for a non-Levy employer, the standard has been pre-populated with the standard from the reservation we just added. Please note that you can still change the standard for the apprenticeship if this has changed since reserving fundings at an earlier date. Once you have chosen the correct standard, click Continue. Please note that all the fields on the next page will need to be agreed between you and your provider before the apprenticeship is live. For now, we're just going to add in some pseudo details whilst I talk through the screen. The apprentice email that you input will receive a notification once you and the training provider have approved the apprenticeship. This gives the apprentice the opportunity to join the service and view their apprenticeship details. The training course and start date will be pre-populated from the reservation, but this can be changed at this point. If you leave some information blank, your provider will need to complete these gaps before the apprenticeship is live. For now, we're going to complete all the information and click Save and Continue. You should now see an overview page of the apprenticeship and have multiple options. The first option is add another apprentice to this apprenticeship reference. This is sometimes known as the cohort. Choosing this will take you through the same actions we've just taken, but the training provider will be kept the same. You'll need to reserve funding again for each apprentice added. The second option is yes, approve and notify training provider. This means that you are happy to confirm all the details and for the apprenticeship to start. If you select this option, you will not need to reapprove the apprenticeship unless the provider changes any details. The third option is no, request changes from training providers. This will send the apprenticeship record to the provider to amend and approve, and you will then be asked to approve again. You can also edit or delete the single apprentice or delete the entire cohort on this page if any details are incorrect or you do not submit the cohort and find the apprenticeship is not continuing. This does not remove the reservation from the account. We are going to select the second option, yes, approve and notify training provider. You will be presented with a free text box if you want to add any notes to the provider. For now, we'll leave this blank and go ahead and click Save and Continue. Once you have done this, you will get a confirmation page with, again, a big green box to say you have added the apprentice details and sent it to your provider. You will not need to carry out any further action to this apprenticeship unless your provider makes any changes or if you have not fully approved your apprenticeship yet. This was the third option on the last page. The training provider will input some information around recognised prior learning, which should have been discussed with you prior to setting up the apprentice record. This will be visible within the record once it is fully approved. I mentioned earlier that there were two ways to reserve funding, and so we're just going to briefly show you the other journey now. So if we go to the home page, and then within the finance section on the home page, you can select your funding reservations. This page will show you all of the funding reservations you have made along with their status of where they are in draft, created, used or expired. If you want to reserve more funding, you can click Reserve More Funding at the top of the page and you will go through the exact same process as when we reserved funds and added the apprentice earlier. We won't go through these pages and add another apprentice. We just wanted to show you that there are two ways to reserve funding and also that this page is available to see how many reservations you have created and used. Again, if you begin to pay Levy, you do not need to reserve funding as Levy paying employers fund apprentices from their accumulated Levy balance. I will now hand over to Luke, who will walk you through how to manage your apprentices.
Thanks, Rob. So now we're going to go back to the home page and we're going to click into Apprentices, where there are multiple areas that you can go into from this point. If we just click into Apprentices, please. Great, thank you. So the Add an Apprentice link is the journey we've just gone through to reserve funds and add an apprenticeship. There's also the apprentice requests, which we'll go into now, and is where you will be able to see any requests with either you either your training provider or Levy transfer employers. And these will be marked as with training providers or with the Levy transfer employers, as well as any that have any further actions that you need to take under either ready to review or under draft. So the apprenticeship that we've just added will currently be sitting under with training providers in this instance. For now, though, we're going to go back and go under the other section that we have there under Manage Apprentices. And we'll be able to see all fully approved apprenticeship records that you have on your account. If we click into any of these live records, you'll be able to see all of the apprenticeship details that you will have previously gone through with your provider. And certain areas of this you can also edit if you would need to. So from this screen, one of the most common actions that an employer will have to do is to change the status of an apprenticeship record. And from here, we can pause or stop an apprentice. You can do this by clicking into the Edit Status next to the status field. And then you'll be prompted on a new page to select the status that you want to apply. On this page, you will have three options. Pause the apprenticeship. This is used if your apprentice is on a temporary break in learning, or if you want to temporarily pause payments to your provider. You will be able to resume an apprentice at a later date with this option. There's Stop the apprenticeship. This is used if your apprentice is no longer on the apprenticeship and you want to permanently stop payments to the provider. If you are stopping an apprenticeship, please ensure the date you apply the stop for is the month after you are responsible for paying the provider. You also do not need to stop any apprenticeships that are completing. We will update the completion status in your employer account once all payments are made. And then the third option is to go back to your apprentice details. This is if you decide that you do not need to change the status. For this initial journey, we're going to tick Pause the apprenticeship and click Save and Continue. This will open a new page where we'll be asked to confirm that we want to pause the apprenticeship. Here, we're going to tick Yes, Pause this apprenticeship and click Save and Confirm. Once this has been done, you will again get the big green box of the successful action and a confirmation page. Please note that the pause date that applies to the apprenticeship is always set to the date that you are adding it. You do not have the option to choose a specific pause date, but any paused payment will apply from the date that you're putting it in. As mentioned, employers can resume apprentices, which is done in the same manner as pausing, with the pause an apprenticeship option changing to resume an apprenticeship. So for now, we will go in and just show the resume option is there. So we'll now go back and go to another record and just show you how to stop an apprentice. So if we click into Edit Status again, and we will choose Stop this apprenticeship this time and click Save and Continue. You'll then be presented with 6 options. This screen has been added to help employers stop apprenticeships correctly on the service. Specifically, option 3, apprenticeship training has ended, does not apply a stop on an apprenticeship. This option has been added to prevent apprenticeships being stopped when they are actually completing. Completing apprenticeships should not be stopped, and we will update the completion status on your employer account once all payments are made to the training provider. Stopping the record will affect payments to the provider. All other options on this screen will lead to a stop date being added to the apprentice record. For this example, we will select the top option, Apprentice has left my employment, and select Save and Continue. You will then be asked to input a stop date, which we will do now, and click Save and Continue. You'll then be asked a further question of if your apprentice has been made redundant, and in this case, we'll select No, and then Save and Continue. And then you'll be taken to an overview page to confirm the details here. So on this one, we're going to click Yes, Stop this apprenticeship, and click Save and Confirm. And then you will be presented with a green confirmation box informing you that the apprenticeship has been stopped. Please note that once a stop is in place on a record, it cannot be removed. So if there are any concerns with this, please contact our support team who may be able to assist further. You are able to move a stop that has been applied, which you can just see here on the screen just for reference next to the edit one next to the actual stop that we've applied, but you cannot actually remove a stop once it's in place. So we've just gone through the pause and the stops for you. Another change that we sometimes see for employers, which is available to action from this page, is to change the training provider for an apprenticeship if they've moved. So from this screen on a stop record, it also shows on live, just so you're aware. Next to the training provider, you can see the change button next to the provider name. And if we click into this, we'll be taken to a new page. And this will give you a warning of what you are about to do. And it will inform you that if it is live, you will need to stop the apprenticeship in the same process. Please note that the stop date cannot be in the future, just so you're aware of that. So in this instance, we're just going to click continue. So just so you're aware, if the record was still live, you would have been taken through to the stop process that we've just gone through if the record was still live and you clicked change on the provider name. In this instance, because we've already had a stop record, we're going straight to being able to choose who the new training provider is. So if we just go in and choose a training provider from the list here, you can type it in or choose from the drop down. Then you will get the further option to, as you similarly did when you are adding an apprentice, to say if you'll add the details yourself or if you will send them to the training provider. In this instance, we're going to say I'll add them now, and then select continue. And then you'll be asked to put in the start date in which the apprenticeship has been moved over to the new training provider, which we'll do now. Please note that this date does have to be after the stop dates that you have applied previously on the record. You'll then be asked to put in the new planned end date with the new provider, and this must be after the start date that you've just added on the previous page, at least 1 month's gap between the two. So click continue. You'll then be asked what the remaining cost is that's been agreed with the new training provider. So we just need to input a value here of what the agreed cost will have been between the two parties, and then click continue. This will take you to an overview page highlighting the requested changes that you're making against this record. And it gives you the opportunity to change these if needed. In this instance, we are happy with what we've added, and so we can click confirm and send. You'll get a confirmation page of the request, and that has been sent to the training provider with the green button box showing you that you've successfully carried out this action. You will now, for reference, if you had to stop the apprenticeship record, you will now see in your Manage Apprentices section that the apprenticeship has stopped, and you will see a new request under Apprentice Requests that we saw earlier under with training providers for this record whilst it's saying with the provider. Once they've finished approving this, the new record with them will move under Manager Apprenticeships. Just to also note, if you're gaining an apprenticeship from another employer, if they are moving to you, the request from the training provider, which they do in a similar fashion to what we've just done, will appear under Apprentice Requests that we showed earlier under Ready to Review. And you will approve this in the same way that you may have done if a provider has initially started to add an apprenticeship for you. So that's finishing going through and manage your apprenticeships. We are now going to go through the finance section of an apprenticeship service account. And so we will just need to look at a Levy account to show you just some details from within there. So for levy paying employees, if you wish to view your levy balance and the forecasting tool available to you, you go to the finance section of the home page and select your finances. Just please note, it's important to state that non-levy employees that begin to start paying levy, you will only see a levy balance in this section of your account if during the account registration process, you selected the annual payable option close to £3 million and added the PAYE scheme using your government gateway details. If the PAYE scheme was added via the Accounts Office reference number, the PAYE scheme will need to be removed and re-added via Government Gateway underneath your PAYE schemes, which you saw earlier in the webinar. So, in the finance section of the account, from the top left box, current funds, this is a true figure representing the current levy balance that is within your account. The box in the top right, funds spent since, is also a true figure, and this shows what has been spent in the last 12 months in both training costs and transfers to other employees if you have those from within your account. The box on the bottom left side, estimated total funding for the next 12 months. This is an estimation based upon the amount of levy that entered your account, including the 10% top-up for the previous month, extrapolated over the next 12 months. If there is no levy in for recent months, then we'll go back as far as possible to get the most recent positive figure that's come into your account. The bottom right box, estimated planned spending for the next 12 months, is based upon the active apprenticeships, transfers and completion payments, which is expected spend for known apprenticeships, extrapolated over the next 12 months. Please note that you may also see another box to the right of this one called estimated funds expiring in, which is based upon the total sum of levy that's entered your account 24 months ago, minus training and transferred costs and any previously expired funds which will be due to expire for that month. Please note that the bottom row of figures are estimates only and are likely to change based upon how your levy in and spending activity changes. Employers also have 4 options at the bottom of the screen to perform more in-depth analysis of your account finances. We won't show these in the demonstration in detail. However, we will just highlight what each of the options can do for you. The 4 options are view transactions, download transactions, funding projection, and transfers. Please note that when a non-levy employer accesses the Your Finance section of the account, they are only presented with the options of view transaction, download transaction, and transfers. Only levy-paying employees will see the funding projection access link. So just to go through each one of these just with information, view transactions will show on screen transactions in and out of your employer account on a monthly basis. Transactions in is typically your monthly levy payments. Transactions out are typically your payments to providers and any expired levy or transfers. Download transactions allows you to download all of your financial data for a specified period of time into either a .csv or Excel file format for any off-system data analysis that you may need. The funding projection tool can project the cost of future apprenticeships based upon the existing activity on your account. Transfers allow levy-paying employers to transfer up to 25% of their unused levy to a business of their choice. This is now the end of the demonstration, and we'll move back to some further slides to discuss transfers in a bit more detail. Please bear with us while we move over.
Just while we're moving over, can I just remind people that there's lots of questions about will a recording of this webinar be available? Yes, it will, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how to access that recording when I get onto my bit after Luke and Rob have finished.
That's great, thank you, Nick. So just to show some things on the slides here. So the amount of levy that can be transferred to other employees is calculated from the previous financial year and is 25% of the total amount of levy paid in for that year. So for example, if an employer has paid £1 million in levy declared to HMRC in the funding year of 22-23, they will be eligible to transfer £250,000 of levy in the funding year 23-24. For more information about transfers, please view our online help guides or watch our dedicated transfers video from our YouTube channel. So this concludes our journey through the Apprenticeship Service account. I'll now hand back over to Nick for any questions that we have. Thank you.
Thanks, Luke, and Rob and Nithya for going through that. That was a real whistle-stop tour through all of the key Apprenticeship Service journeys. So yeah, very detailed and insightful inputs from you guys. Really good, thank you. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to tell you about our YouTube channel. We've mentioned that there are help support videos available for you. So our channel is at DFE Sector Comms, and we've got 3 playlists on that channel. So the recording of today's session will be in the webinar recordings playlist, and that will be a fully accessible recording of today. That'll be available in about a fortnight's time. Also, we have some other support videos covering the different functions of the Apprenticeship Service in the Using the Apprenticeship Service playlist, and then a couple of other videos created to support the delivery of apprenticeships that are available in the Apprenticeship Support video playlist. So go and have a look at that channel, subscribe to it, and click on the bell icon to get any alerts when new content is uploaded. And then in terms of other support that's available, on this slide, we've got a few links of places that you can go to get more support. We've also put a PDF document together, the handout with all the details of the links that we referred to during the session. You can now get to access that from the control panel on your screen under the handouts tab. So go and have a look at that. That way you don't have to scribble down any of the details whilst we're going through them. In terms of other ways to stay up to date, I'd always point you towards apprenticeships.gov.uk. Great place for information about apprenticeships and the Apprenticeship Service. There's the link there to register for any of our future webinars, and I've included the link that you follow in the handout. And then to note, by the 12th of March, we'll have a recording of today's session available on that link as well, that you can get into on demand, and that recording will be available for about a month or so, whilst just so we've got coverage whilst we get the version up onto YouTube. And then finally, if you've got any specific queries about the Apprenticeship Service, you can use the self-service support tool, or you can email them as well, and obviously the contact details are on the slide and the handout. So what we'll do then is we'll move into the questions bit, the Q&A session. And thanks everybody for submitting your questions as you've been going along. Lots for us to go through. So if I can start back at the beginning. So we were talking about creation of accounts and adding PAYE schemes or whatever else. So we'll start back at some of those questions. The first one, Luke, is for you. Can you explain why an employer might want to add multiple PAYE schemes to their account?
Yes, thanks, Nick. So we would usually only expect there to be multiple PAYE schemes on account if the employer is large enough that they may have potentially multiple organizations that are connected to each other. We use the connected sort of organizations term that is based on HMRC. But if you have multiple ways that you pay your employees through multiple PAYE schemes, and you wish to have more than one PAYE scheme on the account to contribute to a larger single levy balance, that would usually be when you'd see multiple PAYE schemes put onto an account, but they would need to be PAYE schemes that are connected through connected organizations in order to have them on there. If we're looking at smaller employers, we wouldn't usually expect to see them with more than one PAYE scheme, unless potentially they have changed how their organization might be structured in some way, maybe move on to a new PAYE scheme. But in those instances, we would potentially see maybe an outdated, unused one removed to then add a more accurate one onto the service. So you wouldn't necessarily need to keep an old, inactive PAYE scheme on an account.
Okay, thank you. I think you've just a few minutes ago went through this, but there's a question there about I think there's an employer that's borderline levy and non-levy, so they were probably non-levy and moved into levy, and they're not seeing how they can see that those levy payments in their account. Could you just remind people how to do that?
Yes, of course. So I know we've added that option to say if you were close to £3 million in the original registration journey, that allows for people to know if they were potentially going to be moving into levy. But in instances where maybe that option wasn't there when you were initially adding your PAYE scheme, and if you had added the PAYE scheme via your account office reference number, that will not actually start to accumulate levy in your Apprenticeship Service account. In those specific instances, you would look to go under your PAYE schemes on your account, remove the PAYE scheme and re-add it using your government gateway details, and that would allow the levy to actually start to move into your account. Although please note, it may not be an initial thing that you see the levy come in. You may need to wait until the next levy transfer to us, which is done around, I believe, the 20th of the month roughly. So you may need to wait until then to actually see your account update to start showing that levy come in.
Okay, thank you. Rob, there's a question, I think it's about the initial login. So it says, does each user access the login through their own phone numbers, or can one email be used, for example, a business email be used?
Yeah, I mean, we'd strongly advise that you don't really use generic accounts, that you use personal accounts because of the two-factor authentication issue, because you will normally select a device where you will get the code either through an application or a text message, and the device is set per account. So if you've got a single email address, you can only really have a single device. That creates issues. So we would always advise creating more of a named account rather than a generic login.
Okay, cool, thank you. Luke, back to you. I think there's one a little that relates to a little bit in the manage apprenticeship section. How can I find that apprentice's levy transfer cohort number? This person who's asked the question needs to delete an incorrect one.
Okay, yep, that's fine. So this would partially depend on how far through the process a levy transferred apprenticeship has been set up. So if you are a receiving employer getting funds from another employer and it's currently in a pending state, you're waiting for the sending employer to approve an actual apprenticeship record, you'll find that underneath the apprentices, then the apprentice requests, and we had one of those 4 blue boxes, and one of those is with a levy transfer sending employer. That would be where you'd find it if it's a pending state. If it is fully approved and you are a sending employer, you will just have the apprentice underneath your manager apprentices side of your account to be able to find them in that list there. If we're talking about a sending employer, then you wouldn't actually have an apprenticeship record on your account, but you'd be able to find out details about your approved levy transfers underneath the finance section of your account, and then going under transfers, where you can see your transfer connections and your transfer requests set up with a receiving employer, and you can see the cohort references underneath the list there of the ones that you've actually agreed.
Okay, thank you. Can you just remind people how you amend users? So this particular person needs to remove a team member from the account that's now left the business. So can you just remind people how that's done for them, please?
Yeah, sure. So from the homepage, along the top, you should see your team section of your account. And as long as there is more than one user on an account, you should be able to remove another user. The only time that you can't actually remove somebody is when you are the only person on the account. You can't remove yourself. If for any reason you are not seeing that remove option for a user, it may be that they maybe added you with one of the lower permissions that we saw whilst on the webinar, that you maybe don't have the full access that's there. If that's the case and you're the only person on the account, then you may need to contact our support team, and they may be able to help you with getting the right permissions that you need if you are now the main account owner that's on there, and then you can invite a second person, because we do advise to have at least 2 people on an account for these sort of circumstances.
Cool, thank you very much. And then Sam, a question about why we changed the employer agreement that we referred to. Why do we change the agreement?
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, there was a question about why we sort of changed the agreements and sort of how often people might have to sign the legal agreements. So the legal agreements update on the apprenticeship service, they're normally sort of annually, but sometimes there might be the need to do them a bit more regular than that. Just so people are aware, obviously the funding rules around apprenticeships and the policies around apprenticeships do get reviewed every year, so they're sort of like reposted, as well as sort of like the terms and conditions of using the apprenticeship service. So they get reviewed annually, at least annually, and so when they are done, we republish the legal agreements. We republish all the changes, and we ask employers to re-sign those legal agreements, sort of when needed, or before adding apprenticeships again.
Thank you. Luke, this question comes up a lot, and this is about the status of apprentices. So this particular person got an apprentice, they've gone through their EPA, their endpoint assessment, so they want to know when the apprentice, or what point they can classify the apprentice as completed.
Okay, great, thanks, Nick. So the status on an apprenticeship record on your account is directly based upon a training provider receiving their final completion payment for that apprenticeship. So we hold 20% of the apprenticeship total back until they actually record the completion and achievement or fail within their submission of their data to us. So it may very well be that they have potentially updated their details to show that they have achieved, but it could very well be that you haven't been written out to by the endpoint assessment organization, because that process is based upon when they actually request a certificate for your apprentice, and then that gets printed out and sent to you, or sometimes directly to the apprentice. So there is a bit of a difference with the status on your apprenticeship service account and actually receiving a notification sort of in writing from the endpoint assessment organization to say what it is that they maybe have achieved, if they've got their pass or merit distinction or something along those lines. So that's why you might see a bit of a gap between seeing your new status and actually getting that certificate, as well as that covering letter that comes from your endpoint organization.
Right, okay, then Luke, well, I've still got you. Another question here about so specific scenario, they've got two PAYE schemes that they want to remove from the current apprenticeship levy account and set up new accounts within their individual names. And then how will the deductions and how will the funding be transferred onto the new accounts?
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Nick. So any levy declarations that you've made that have entered into the original Levy Government Gateway account are fixed into that account. They can't be removed, or they can't be moved to a different account. They are in there from the point that they are actually declared and go into there. So it'll only be any levy declarations that are made once those PAYE schemes have been moved that you'll start to actually get levy into any separate accounts that you have. We do have some further guidance that you may want to look into our help articles that we have around potentially changes of circumstance or structure of particular, potentially large levy accounts that they may have, and what you can do around the levy that's within those previous accounts compared to when you're moving them maybe to a different point. So you can contact our support team if you need some further guidance on that, but we do also have some online articles that should hopefully be able to help with that. But the main is you would need to remove the PAYE schemes from that large levy account to be able to create the new levy accounts that you can do as soon as those PAYE schemes have been removed. So as long as there's a PAYE scheme removed from the account, you can immediately put it onto a different account if you do need to. So you can set up that account straight away if you want to make sure it's ready for when the next levy declarations are made.
Thank you. Nithya, a couple of questions about the recruit input that you gave. I know you mentioned this, but it's worth reminding people. So you go through the recruit, enter all the details. Where does that advert get shown?
Yeah, once the advert has been created, it will go through our quality assurance team. They'll check the details, and if there are any issues, they will reject the advert, and it will go back to the employer for amendments. And you can and the employers can amend the details and resubmit back to the quality assurance team. So and they'll check again. Once the advert has been approved by the quality assurance team, it will be posted either on Find an Apprenticeship website or through an external website, depending on where the employer have chosen to post the advert. So this will be asked while creating the advert. So depending on where you choose, it will be posted on either Find an Apprenticeship website or through external links. Yeah.
Okay, and is that the same for the NHS? Because NHS, there's a question there that they have to use a particular system, but can they do that on Find an Apprenticeship and also through their system as well?
Yeah, they can add a link for their system to post the advert, so it can be done for NHS as well, the external website. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then where the provider has added the vacancy, can we share? Can the employer view any of the applications that come in?
Yep. So there is a new functionality which we have recently released called sharing applications. So with this functionality, the providers can now share the applications with the employer, and the employer should be able to view these application and manage the application from their recruit dashboard. They can also comment about it, or they can proceed to interview with that application. So it's been done through the system now, yeah, with this new with this new functionality, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. Sam, couple of questions, or a couple of people asking about this. So obviously we focused on recruiting, which tends to mean that you're looking for a new member of staff to fill a vacancy. But there's a couple of questions about people that have already either identified somebody to fill a vacancy, or staff that are currently within an organisation starting an apprenticeship. So what happens with those guys?
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, there was a couple of questions of that, I think, whilst we were going through the recruit side. You don't have to add sort of a vacancy in terms of an advert, that the journey that sort of Nithya went through in terms of if you've already got people sort of internally or people that you already have in mind to do an apprenticeship. So you don't necessarily have to create an advert. You can go through the journeys that Rob and Luke have shown earlier, which is where you can sort of either go to create a reservation and then go through to add your apprentice, because you already know the person, you already know the details. You just need to work with a provider in mind. Or if you're a Levy employer, then again, you won't need to go through the reservations journey. It's a case of just working with the provider that you've got in mind and sort of adding that apprentice onto the apprenticeship service.
Cool, thank you very much. Luke, we mentioned sort of the apprentices learning a lot today, and we've used terms like day release and block release. Can you just explain what they are for people, please?
Yes, thanks, Nick. So yeah, we mentioned that when we were looking at finding apprenticeship training, and it's because training providers may advertise how they want to potentially do the training with apprentices. So day release is what you may typically know as for apprenticeships, where it might be on a weekly basis. An apprentice may be with you 4 days a week, and 1 day a week they'll be with the training provider doing their learning or off-the-job training. Whereas block release, there may be some training providers that instead of doing training on a 1 day a week basis, they may wish to instead have potentially 2 weeks or more where they might be with them for that entire period, doing a large block of training that maybe is for a large section of the apprenticeship that they need to do, or maybe just a large section that they need to be focused on. And then they'll be with you for full weeks, for maybe 4 weeks or something like that instead. And it may be that they'll go back and forth between doing full weeks or 2 weeks, or even more than that, of doing a large amount of training and then being with you fully for a specific period of time as well. So it's just that you wouldn't have that regular 1 day a week that they'd be out. Instead, they can actually sort of bring together the training to be over multiple days if they do want. It just depends on what the training provider wishes to sort of give to you as an option.
Yeah, so this is an agreement that you make with the training provider about the method of delivery of the training. So
yes,
have a conversation with the provider and see what their offer is and how well that suits you. Okay, Rob, a question for you about deleting requests. So how do you delete a request? If you make one and then the individual either doesn't progress, or if you make a duplicate request. This is about adding an apprentice.
Yeah, I'd say if this is a reservation. So on the homepage where you can go in and view the reservations, it then shows the list of all the reservations. I think if you can click into one of those reservations, you do have an option to delete. So you can go that way. If the reservations then become a full-on apprenticeship, then you'd probably have to go through like the stop apprentice details, or that journey, the stop apprentice journey, to then stop that apprentice.
Okay, thank you. Sam, there's a levy paying employer here who utilised all their funds. Can they access other funding? Can they either get other funding from other levy employers, or do they reserve funding at that point?
So if you're a levy paying employer, then you won't be able to go through the reservations journey and then add reservations. There are transfers set up, which I know we've got a bit of information on and sort of touched on it today, and obviously we've got some of the signposts and documentation which will go out afterwards, but you can certainly sort of look to receive a transfer from another organisation. Other than that, and I know it was another question that was asked further down below, but you can still add apprentices. However, what will happen is that there will be sort of co-investment collections that will be needed from the provider to you as an employer. So if you've used up your levy, we don't stop you from adding apprentices. You can still add apprentices. It's just that you'll be charged co-investment by the provider for them.
Okay, thank you. Luke, a couple of questions about moving apprentices between companies. I think there's one in particular about I think a block transfer of apprentices from one company, an old company, onto a new one. Do they need to be ended in one and then restarted as new, or can they transfer? And then a question about change of employer, and then also a question about transferring from one organisation to another if the apprentice moves. Can you try and cover all of those three?
Yep, I'll do my best, Nick, thanks. So there's no ability for an employer to bulk move apprenticeships from within their account. So if they are moving from one account to another, all of the apprenticeships do need to be stopped individually by the employer, and they can be moved over using the function that that a training provider can actually do. There is an ability for a training provider to bulk upload a new set of apprentice records if they are all moving from one employer to another. That's a system that they do have available to them. However, all of the old records that are there still would need to be manually stopped, and they're done individually within the old employer account in order for the training provider to be able to actually use that bulk tool that they have to create new records with the new organization or employer that they've moved to. So there's nothing that an employer can do, but they can talk with a training provider that they may have to see if they're able to use the bulk upload tool that they have to be able to create the new records. But again, they would need to individually all be approved by the new employer account as well. There's no way to bulk approve. So they can create them, but they would individually need to be approved. I think there's a question about changing employer and the date that it would apply for. And I think somebody says specifically the 1st of April, I think was the example they gave. So the most important thing about the stop date that's applied is that it should be based upon whether or not you are responsible for funding for that month of the apprenticeship. So if they're moving on the 1st of April, then you would apply the stop for April of that year. You can't choose a specific day within a month for the stop. It's just for the 1st of the month that you're putting in. So for example, if they're moving on the 1st of April, you would be responsible for funding the training provider on the apprenticeship for all of March. So you would need to ensure that you put in April for that stop. And that would be the same if there is, if it's anywhere partially within that month that you would actually be having that change occur. So if it's the 2nd, 3rd or 4th of April, you would still apply for the 1st of April because you would not be responsible for that April funding. And so you'd stop it for April, and then that new employer would be able to start the new record that they have from April. So they would be responsible for that month's worth of funding and continuing forward. Is that everything I think we had in that group of questions, Nick, or is there something else?
So yeah, I think that's it. Thank you. So Sam, move on to you. A couple of questions for you. A question about apprentices moving from one provider to another. I think there's a concern here that well, they want to be assured that there's a fail-safe to make sure that the funding cap isn't being exceeded.
Yeah, so it's kind of on the back of probably the answers that Luke's just given. So there's the fail-safe in terms of there is a funding band maximum, and that is for the apprenticeship. So that kind of when that apprentice has started that apprenticeship, if the funding band maximum is £10,000 at that point, it will always be kind of £10,000 for that particular learner and that apprenticeship that they're on. It's probably important in terms of when an apprentice is moving from, let's say, one provider to another, that the provider carries out the relevant sort of assessment checks to sort of see what learning has already been done on program, and in terms of what is still remaining to be done, and then probably charge accordingly, or sort of quote the cost of training accordingly for that. There might be the case that sometimes a provider may say that they require above the funding band maximum, but obviously as an employee, ultimately you have the decision whether you would want to work with that provider or not. But yeah, so we do keep the funding band maximums in there to ensure that apprenticeships don't just go above and beyond that. So.
Cool. And then another one, this is about where are we? So if an apprentice is stopped, so if an apprenticeship is stopped by one employer and then a new employer employs that apprentice, can they resume the apprenticeship with that new company?
Yeah, there was a couple of questions about can they resume. So one was in that case in the scenario that you just said there, and another one was if they stopped and then came back and then resumed. They're all possible. So an apprentice can continue on to restart or resume their apprenticeship and learning. If the apprenticeship record on the service, the apprenticeship service has been stopped, a new record will have to be created which covers the remaining costs and everything, and then it's probably not one for employers, but there's a way that a provider can record it in their ILR and flag the learning as a restart, which means that then the apprentice and the apprenticeship will be able to continue on that learning journey and that learning path. But yes, that is possible, yes.
Okay, cool, thank you. And then, so I'm aware we're sort of out of time, but if people don't mind hanging on, I've got a couple of other questions that I just want to go through. So if you can stay with us for a couple of minutes, we'll carry on just going through a couple of extra questions. There's a question, Luke, about a concept you mentioned about an employer losing funds. I think we refer to it as funds expiring within an account. Could you just explain what that is?
Yes, of course. So when it comes to losing funds, or if we talk about the expired funds, so levy amount usually goes in on a monthly basis into your account, and there is a system where if that levy amount that's in your account, if it's still within there after 24 months, then that levy actual amount would expire and be removed from your account. So the actual levy that gets paid out to providers on a monthly basis is used in technically the oldest date order. So we'll try to use the levy that's first entered your account first to make sure that you aren't going to actually expire any funds. But this only usually happens when you have a particularly large amount of levy that might be going into your account and you don't have enough apprenticeships that are using the funds on that monthly basis to actually get to the point of using up all that's going in. So if you've only got a small amount of levy going in, you're more than likely going to be using all of it. But if after 24 months from that date of that levy going in, that amount hasn't been used from the apprenticeships in that time, then you would actually start to lose some of your levy funds on a monthly basis if you don't get to the point of actually using it at that point. So if that does happen, then it may be that you could potentially take on further apprentices to reach that amount if you're able to do so, but there's nothing that we've done about stopping that expiring funds that exists. So it would just start to appear there, and you would only see it under your finance section if you actually are starting to get expiry of funds. If it's estimated that you're not going to, you won't see that value in there.
Okay. I'm going to skip on and just pick out a few of the more interesting questions, I think. There's a question here about Sam for you. This is why on earth would an employer choose to pause a learner?
Yeah, so pauses are available for employers because ultimately the apprenticeship service and the apprentices and apprenticeships are kind of in the employer's control. So if there's any sort of questions around sort of maybe payments, if there is a period where maybe uncertainty, or where there's a break in learning, so things like maternity or long-term sick, and other examples of a break in learning, an employer can have the control to add a pause, which will temporarily sort of pause those payments to a provider. There are ways that a provider can record it in their ILR, so they do record breaks in learning in their ILR, but as we've built the service, we've built it to give employers the powers kind of pause and control their apprenticeship, as well as the stop functionality as well. So.
Okay. And Sam, while I've got you, question about how is it possible to find employers with unused levy funding who are willing to share it with others?
Yeah, so I think it's probably in the last year, it might be longer than that. We've set up a feature which is sort of transfer pledges. So I know we haven't had chance to show that in detail on this webinar, but there are sort of, again, supporting documentations around transfers which will touch on transfer pledges. So I would encourage people that have that question to sort of look at that content. But that's kind of an area where you will have employers that may have levy funds sort of spare, as you were, or are willing to kind of transfer them to other employers, whether that be non-levy small employers or other levy employers that are sort of using up a lot of their levy, as we've seen in questions today. So that feature is available, and those transfer pledges, the values are sort of up to the transfer sender. They may set a specific value that is available, but just to let people aware, or make people aware, that all sort of levy employers can transfer up to 25% of their levy that they've declared in a previous financial year. So, but yeah.
Thank you. And then Rob, a question for you about how soon after payroll's processed, and I assume the declaration goes off to HMRC, does that levy amount of funding get shown in the Apprenticeship Service account?
I think it's typically around 1 month. So the levy submission will be made to HMRC, and then then HMRC make that data available to us, and then we pull that in, I think, around the 23rd of the month. And then that we would then what we call pull the levy, and then if you have made that submission, the funds will be transferred into your employer account.
Okay, thank you. Rob, I would ask this question because I love one of the words that's in this. How do we remove with training providers, as we have one that's been in there for yonks and it won't go?
Yonks. Yeah, well, you can't remove training providers. I think we touched on that in the demo a little bit. You can go onto the list and you can remove all their permissions, so they won't be able to do anything, but they will stay on your list. There is uses for it staying on your list. It does provide a good audit with the activity in some of the training providers you've ever done. And if you ever go back to using that training provider, you've then got the options to very quickly set the permissions. You don't need to go through the full journey. You can just go in, give them the permissions, and then you can get going straight away. But yeah, the short answer is you can't remove them.
Okay, cool. And then my last question, Nithya, this one's for you. So about Recruit, you talked about the Recruit journey, where people fill in the application, and that it goes off to quality assurance. Who actually reads and approves these?
I think if it means the vacancies going through the quality assurance team, then it's a different. It's an external team that they are specifically trained for finding the issues within a vacancy. So they read and approve these requests. If it's the applications that come to the employer or provider from the vacancies, then either an employer or provider can read the application and either reject the application, or they can proceed through the interview with the application. So yeah, it depends on either if it's a vacancy, then it's the quality assurance team. If it's the applications, then it can be either a provider or an employer.
Excellent, thank you, Nithya. Okay, I need to wrap things up now. So thank you everybody who asked a question, and thanks to all of the presenters that have gone through as many of those as we did. It was really good. So we're at the end of our session. Thank you all for staying the course and listening to the entire thing. Please do remember as you leave the webinar, just to complete that short survey and let us know what you thought. So all that's left for me to do now is say goodbye, everybody, and hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Cheers, bye.